another episode of RPMbassy. I'm Mark. Today is going to be a little bit of a different one. I'm not trying to highlight an album so much as highlight where it went wrong. So normally we talk about stuff that we really love, aside from, the Five Diamonds and a Dud series. But today this is an album that I think kind of missed the mark, but there's some hints of gems in there, and there's some really cool stuff, and I think it's almost there, but it's just missing something. But I wanted to talk about it anyway. So the album I'm talking about is 1979's Fate for Breakfast by Art Garfunkel. So as I say, 1979 album, came out in March of that year. This is his fourth solo album. Came in 6 different covers. This one I got the pervert one, which is where he's sucking his fingers, bit weird. But yeah, this is basically the motif. He was sort of in a shoot with all kinds of different sort of breakfast stuff. There's one with him drinking orange juice. There's one with him sort of taking a cool pose and stuff, etc., etc. So yeah, this album wasn't super well received at the time that it came out, and I can tell just by listening to it, I can understand why. And I'm not massively familiar with Art Garfunkel or the Simon and Garfunkel stuff. I basically know their hits. It's not an era or a sound that I ever have really kind of delved into. But the reason why I bought this album, and probably the reason why many people in the UK bought it, is for the one song on here which everybody knows, which is Bright Eyes. And going into this album, when I picked it up, I got it years ago at this point, I thought that was kind of indicative of the album, and I was very much mistaken, sadly. This is kind of a 50-50 soft rock album, and with some like folk and kind of melancholic songs. I was kind of hoping for all melancholic folk when I got into this, but unfortunately it wasn't. The whole thing kind of does feel a little bit hokey, like the cover and everything. Like, it's a bit of a weird cover. The presentation of it is very odd. And I mean, as far as like personnel on this album, it's actually pretty cool. You've got Louis Shelton, who produced the vast majority of the album, and then Mike Batt, who produced Bright Eyes. Louis Shelton, you'll know people who he's done stuff with, like Whitney Houston. He did stuff with John Lennon, Lionel Richie, like tons and tons of names. Like, he's pretty prolific. And then Mike Batt is a British producer who produced Bright Eyes in this instance. So yeah, the album, as I say, it's kind of like, I wasn't expecting it, but just straight off the bat, it's very soft rock. It's very inoffensive in the worst way possible. At least if I could say I really hated an album, at least it made me feel something. But this, the first half, I don't feel much at all. It's not to say that there's anything wrong with it, but again, that's kind of the problem. The music itself is fine, just fine. Production is really good, I will give it that. The drums sound fantastic and crisp. The vocals and everything, they sound really good. The drums in particular are the thing that I really love. They don't crowd the mix at all, but they are still very punchy, and they sort of cut through very nicely. It's a really well produced and mixed album. But yeah, the first few tracks especially, we've got the opening track, In a Little While, brackets I'll Be On My Way. That is such a weird soft rock, like sort of cheesy, infomercially radio friendly elevator music kind of song. It is exactly what I didn't think Art Garfunkel was the kind of person to make. As I say, I was not experienced at all with any of his music, either solo or in Simon and Garfunkel, and it kind of threw me off. I sort of initially started out this album on the wrong foot, because I was like, I do not like this. It does pretty much continue for the first few tracks, as I say, and then you get to Miss You Nights, which is the last track on side 1. That's a cover of the Cliff Richard song, by the way. That's not too bad, actually. That gets pretty good. like piano ballady kind of thing, a lot more melancholic. It's kind of more what I expected, not necessarily the instrumentation that I expected, but it's getting there. And then side 2 is kind of where it really kicks off. And if it were me personally, and if it was this day and age, side 2 would be an EP on its own, and we'd forget side 1 existed. So side 2 starts off with Bright Eyes, obviously like a fantastic track, everybody knows it. You know, the orchestration, the arrangements, the vocals, and the mix, especially how open and wide it sounds. And for me personally, something that I really appreciated while listening to this that I hadn't necessarily thought of before was the bass in it. I'm pretty sure it's a fretless bass. It doesn't sound like there's any fret going on there, but the mix of the bass and the bass playing in particular is really, really phenomenal, and it sounds excellent on that track. Following up from Bright Eyes is probably my favourite track on this album, actually. Finally Found a Reason. This is what I was expecting. When I picked up an Art Garfunkel album, I was like, cool, I'm going to get some really interesting, introspective, melancholic, like acoustic guitar driven, folky kind of stuff. That song is that. Finally Found a Reason is absolutely banging. If you only take one thing away from this video, Finally Found a Reason is the song to listen to, in my opinion. You've already heard Bright Eyes. Everybody's heard Bright Eyes. You know what it sounds like. Finally Found a Reason. If you're not overly familiar, like I wasn't, that is the song to take away from this. It's excellent. Then the rest of the album carries on pretty well. Aside from Oh How Happy, that is hell of a cheesy, but that level of soft rock, I can kind of respect it, because it's not the sort of inoffensive soft rock that the first half is. It's egregiously like happy, and it's kind of like almost on like some sort of like Elton John type shit. So I can kind of respect it. It's actually like a little bit infectious. Then the final track on the album, Take Me Away, that's like this really cool ballad kind of thing. Like I wish there was more of that on the entire album. It's almost like prog rock at some points. Like you've got weird little piano bits. It reminds me a lot of the Dire Straits album Love Over Gold, that similar kind of sound where there's a lot of piano driven stuff, like Private Investigations and stuff, and Telegraph Road. Yeah, that track, that's an amazing way to end the album. And as I say, like that last half really, really is enjoyable. Beyond the Tears as well, that's the third track on side B. That almost has like a Bond theme type feel to it. It's subdued, but it's got that kind of like tonality to it. And I really love the sort of tape warmth that you hear in the recording, and it's not just like the sound from a turntable or anything. It is like, I've checked it with like digital versions and stuff as well, and that tape warble is in there just at the beginning with the piano, and I really, really love that. It adds a lot of depth to the sound. So yeah, just a short one really to kind of highlight this album. I recommend you check out side B. Anything from Bright Eyes to the end of the album, really do give that a listen, because there's some really cool stuff on here. It's kind of marred by the first like 3 or 4 tracks of side 1. It's weird. Like I did not expect it. I think this is going to be one of those things where I'm going to have to delve deeper into Art Garfunkel's work, into Simon and Garfunkel as a pair, to kind of see if I've missed the mark on what they were like. Because as I say, all I know is their big stuff, and to me, like that sort of sound is an acoustic guitar and like melancholic, depressive kind of stuff, occasionally with some peppy stuff, but it always seemed to be like acoustically driven, and this is like so far away from that. So I think if anything, this has kind of inspired me to take a deeper look into Art Garfunkel in particular, maybe delve more into that era of music, that sound, because there's something here. It's not quite there, but there is something. So if you haven't heard it, if you're not familiar with Finally Found a Reason, especially, like, do give it a listen. Do check it out, because there's something to take away from it, and I'm sure some people will probably appreciate that soft rock stuff. you know, in some ways, maybe on a different day, perhaps I would, you know, God knows, because I like Genesis across all eras, so I'm hardly a saint myself in that regard. But yeah, Art Garfunkel, Fate for Breakfast. Give it a look, see what you think.